Welcome, everyone, to another special episode of the Buck Stops here. And I'm the Buck, Kirk Buchner. I run NotInHallOfFame.com and, of course, the United States Athletics Hall of Fame. What you're going to do after you watch this great interview, you're going to go to www.theusahof.com and you're going to vote for who you think should be part of the second class of the United States Athletics Hall of Fame. And the great thing here, it might be, as we're recording this, it's a week before Election Day, but here, there is no electoral college. It doesn't matter. Your vote counts as much as every other vote, no matter what state you're in. It's democracy, baby. It's awesome. Hell, we'll even let non-Americans vote. I'm not an American, and I created this damn thing. Funny how that can work. I'm here with Chris Mouradian, my partner on the Elevator Show, and we have another special guest, a returning guest. Chris, it's our first returning guest from the Iowa Cubs, and I guess promoted, I understand, for a period of time. You were a call-up.
Yeah, no, I was able to call a couple Chicago Cubs games and got to
Yes.
call two Cubs wins to one no-hitter. So, hey, one no-hitter in 4 games, it's hitting 250 right there. So it's
There you go. Alex Cohen from AAA Iowa Cubs and maybe soon to be the Chicago Cubs. Look at that. Last time we talked, you were telling us a lot about how you sort of came up through the ranks. But
yeah.
I gotta ask, when you get this call up, how does or you know when you know that you're going to be covering, like how much advance
Yeah,
do
I
you have, or
Yeah, so my big league debut was July 14th, and I found out June 13th. So it was a month before. I
okay.
was just in Chicago, like to spend off days in Chicago, going to see more baseball games like a true baseball sicko. And, went to Marquee Sports Network, the television home of the Chicago Cubs, and recorded a podcast with them. And went into the executive producer's office, and he and I have a good relationship. And we were just shooting the biz. He was asking him, like, hey, how you doing? It's like, well, Cubs have lost 8 out of 10. They're not playing good baseball, but I'm here. Everything's good. What's going on with you guys? He said, oh, nothing much. We got some big things going on here. I'm like, oh, like, what do you have going on there? He's like, yeah, like you making your big league debut. I thought it was being punked and ended up, giving me 2 dates, July 14th and July 19th, the game before the All-Star break. Cubs Cardinals at Busch Stadium, and then the game after the All-Star break, Friday, 1:20 Wrigley Field, Cubs against Diamondbacks. And got to call those 2 games in my first big league game. Cubs hit 6 home runs, including back-to-back home runs twice, and beat the Cardinals at Busch Stadium. Then after that, after the All-Star break, had the home game leading after that, and it was Cubs Diamondbacks at Wrigley Field. Cubs ended up losing. And then, in September, got to call the no-hitter in early September, Cubs against Pirates. And then I got to call Anthony Rizzo's return back to Wrigley Field. So it was definitely an eventful 8 weeks.
Like,
Yeah, I'll say to be able to just to kind of come up and like I said, at least you had a little bit of a lead in there. You knew a month in advance that you were going to be getting some work there. How different was that preparation before that first game there? The butterflies in the stomach again, or was it?
I mean, there's always butterflies in the stomach, and naturally, when you have a month to prepare for a big league debut that you've been waiting for 35 years and 6 months, you over prepare. And I mean, I knew a lot about the Cubs, I knew a lot about the players up there, but I certainly had my spreadsheets on the Arizona Diamondbacks and the St. Louis Cardinals and their pitchers and their arsenals. And yeah, you think about it a lot. And I would love to say it's the same game, just a different venue, or same play, just a different auditorium. But when you're sitting up there and you see 40,000 people and you see Cubs Cardinals, it doesn't feel that way for a little bit. So you just have to make sure you take a couple deep breaths and keep it simple and make sure that you're not trying to call game 7 of the World Series when it's game number 72 of 162. So had to keep that mindset a little bit, take some extra deep breaths, drink water, but it all worked out.
who
Yeah, it
was
sounds like it.
who are you paired up with? And I apologize because I don't get to see a lot of the local Cubs games out in Seattle.
Yeah. Yeah, so for the 3 of the 4 games that I did, I was paired up with Jim DeShays, longtime color analyst for the Cubs. Prior to that, the Astros. And then one of the games I was with Joe Girardi. So
Oh,
two
okay.
completely different styles. Joe, I had the inclination beforehand that Joe was like very serious and, as his persona was as a manager, like very stoic. And he couldn't have been further from that. He was so friendly. He was so nice. He was so jovial. And like, I knew that he was a good guy. I just didn't know that our styles would really mesh, and they did. And JD's the best. He's so caring. He's so dry. He doesn't take himself too seriously. So, two different partners, two different sides of broadcasting in terms of their styles, but they were both awesome.
Were you able to learn a lot from the two of them? Like, did they sort of like pull you aside and just say, "Don't worry, kid, we got this"?
Yeah, I mean, it
Their own
was
way.
they knew that I've seen a lot of baseball, and you could tell that they were imparting their wisdom based on what they've seen over the 40 plus years of professional baseball, or even what they've seen this past year, since they've been with the big league club and I wasn't. So they gave short term stuff that they saw on a day to day basis, and then long term knowledge that they were able to really try to learn and cultivate over their amount of time that they've been in the game. So it was really special being able to work with those two.
So tell us
Characterizing.
about September 4th.
Hmm?
Yeah, September 4th, the no hitter.
Yeah.
So you're calling the game, you're watching everything, you know. At what point did you kind of feel like, hey, maybe this is gonna be a special night here, or was it really kind of something that you tried to just focus on the game and just stay in business there?
Yeah, it was really interesting. So I don't know if you remember the game itself, but in the first inning, there was a play that the Pirates got on base, and it was ruled a hit initially, and it got overturned, called an error. I think it was in the third inning or the fourth inning. It was definitely an error, but it got overturned then. So I just remember, looking at the line score: no runs, one hit, no errors; no runs, one hit, no errors. And then in the sixth inning, it's like our inning break, and I see no runs, no hits, no errors. I'm like, oh shoot, all right. Like, it got overturned, and I looked at JD because Jim Chase, who I did the game with, and I said, you know what? Like, this is your booth, your game. I'm just driving it. Like, do you say no hitter? How much do you want to say it? He says, say it as much to your heart's content. Like, I'll come into the inning and say no hitter, no hitter, no hitter, no hitter, no hitter, no hitter, if that really makes it worth it for you. And I said, no, like, we're good. I understand. And we were able to say it freely. And I think it was like middle of the sixth inning when I'm like, wow, like, no runs, no hits, no errors. We got a shot here.
That's an interesting thing that you sort of mentioned because, when I think about it, like you see so many games from so many areas because I've got the MLB pass, and it feels like there's no pattern to it. And that's to Chris's point. I've seen it where people start mentioning it in the third, or they don't even bother mentioning it to the seventh, or even dare I say it, the eighth on occasion. And it's really sort of curious, like where do you sort of even draw that line, even as a broadcaster, with your own superstitions, I suppose? Because how do you not?
I think halfway through. I think after the fifth, you can really start talking about it, in my opinion. I mean, when you get to the fourth inning, you still have half the game left. You're still going into the bullpen. You're raising pitch counts, guys getting used to how you're throwing. Yeah, it's at least two times through the order.
What so with Chicago Cubs, like what's the vibe there for the future? That you're sort of
I
like.
think they're really excited about the farm system that they have. I know this year was not the success that they wanted, but if you look at their younger players, Pete Crow Armstrong, his second half of the year was spectacular. Michael Busch at first base being a rookie, top to bottom, probably had the most consistent year for a Cubs player, not naming Ian Happ or Seiya Suzuki. And then Shota Imanaga, like technically a rookie, but obviously had a great career pitching for the Nippon Baseball League in Japan. When you have those three guys who were added into the nucleus of the big league club and had success, there's a lot of bright things ahead. And then you look at the farm system, minor league player of the year, Moises Ballesteros, 20-year-old catcher now tearing up the Arizona Fall League. Matt Shaw, really good, top-ranked prospect in the Cubs system, over 20 home runs, over 30 stolen bases. And he was hurt for a certain period of time, too. And then you have other top prospects. James Triatos nearly hit 300 this season. Kevin Alcantara made it up to the big leagues. Owen Casey, as a 21, 22-year-old at AAA, led the team, the Iowa Cubs in hits, led him in homers, led him in runs batted in, runs scored, doubles. So when your top five prospects in the Cubs system all have really good years comparatively to their age and level, people are pretty optimistic about it.
What is it you think that they need to do to overtake? Because right now, as we're recording this, it's the day after the Dodgers defeated the Yankees in 5. The Dodgers look loaded for years. Obviously, what it looks like today, in a few months, that changes super quickly. But I'm sure that, like for a Cubs Nation, obviously you're always looking at the Cardinals because you can't not look at the Cardinals. That's ingrained in your DNA. But realistically, the Dodgers are the class of the NL. What will it take, you think, for Chicago for that to sort of like break their way? And I imagine you're probably some names you've just mentioned.
Yeah. Well, I think there's hope that the Dodgers that they're able to defer contracts for decades. They've certainly angled their way into the system with being able to get Shohei Ohtani and the deal that he was able to sign with for them. That makes it a little bit more, I guess, easier to have a competitive advantage. But yeah, for the Cubs, I think that their young nucleus is pretty good. I think having a guy like Pete Crow Armstrong, if he plays the way that he did second half of the season, he could be a legit 6-7 WAR player, like legit MVP candidate. I think their starting rotation was really good. I think Shota Imanaga was great. I think Justin Steele, third consecutive year, having an ERA below 3.2. So that's a really good number 1A, number 2 starter. Jameson Taillon, second year of his contract, really good. Always, an opportunity to get starting pitching. I know the name Corbin Burns has been rumored to the Cubs just because of his relationship with Craig Counsell up in Milwaukee. And you can always get more bullpen. I think early in the season when the Cubs blew 15 saves before the All-Star break, I mean, if you're able to cut that in half, you're right in the thick of the playoff race. So I think back into the bullpen will certainly help. Obviously, you get a power-hitting right-handed hitter as part of that lineup. It'll certainly help. And I think you can obviously add a starting pitcher. So that's probably the three angles that I would look towards if I'm a Cubs fan and what they can improve on.
You mentioned the Ohtani contract, and that's something that Chris and I, we've talked a lot about. And obviously, it's a great one short-term for the Dodgers. I'm a Jays fan in my core, Canadian. That's what we are. And so, like, when we didn't get him, because it looked like there was a good chance that Toronto was going to get him, I was half pissed and half relieved.
Okay.
Especially once I heard what the contract detail was. At some point, I mean, you win that one World Series, so already it's already worth it. At some point, like, just as a basketball fan, just that one trade for Kawhi Leonard was there for 1 year. Don't care. Got the title. Thank you. Want to leave? You never said you were staying. We're cool. But at some point, this is going to break against you because Ohtani is not going to be Ohtani forever. He can't be. He just can't be. And then
that giant. I mean, we didn't expect. I mean, we didn't expect somebody to be a Cy Young caliber pitcher, then come back, have Tommy John surgery, and be one of the best hitters in all of baseball. So
maybe this is sort of
things can be proven wrong. I mean, yes, Father Time is undefeated. I understand that, but it's talking about return of investment. You've already won one World Series, and that's when he was a half a player. He was just a hitter, not a pitcher. You win another one when he's actually pitching. That justifies the contract, in my opinion, for a sport that doesn't have a salary cap.
Yeah,
not your money.
Yeah,
it's not your money. I mean, they're paying against the luxury tax, obviously, but not your money. Like if you say, oh, you know what, Shohei, we're going to give you $700 million. We're going to defer it for 30 years. You win us 2 championships. You make that trade, and at the time that you sign that dotted line, you make the trade. You would.
I suppose. I guess the less he has now, the less that an interpreter can bet on his behalf. Oops.
So, circling back to the
no comment.
No, everyone can send that to Kirk. That's my comment. No one else's.
Kind of want to, as kind of a fan within the Central Division here. You mentioned a few names that are kind of percolating at the top of the farm system here. Matt Shaw, Owen Cassidy. Do you see? You think any of them are ready to make the jump to full time with Chicago? I know you mentioned Alcantara got a taste towards the end of last year.
Yeah, I do. I mean, Matt Shaw, obviously like a college hitter, he's a little bit more advanced. You look at Shaw, you look him take batting practice, and it's a very violent swing and a lot of movement. And it's one of those where you look, it's like, that's not going to work. And it's worked at every level. Every level. The power's legit. He could steal 30 backs. He could play second. He can play third. So, yeah, I think that he's a big league caliber hitter right now. I think Moises Ballesteros is a big league caliber hitter right now. Like, my big thing is, people ask me, like, out of these Cubs prospects, who would you say, like, who would be your bet to be an all-star? And for me, it's Moises. 20-year-old catcher, elite hitter, good athlete, good hands, good kid, works hard. And it's not that hard. I'm not going to say it's not hard to be an all-star as a catcher, but if you hit well as a catcher and you're an average defender, you're an all-star. So, yeah, I think Moises is so ahead of his time when it comes to his offensive capabilities. He swings and his plate approach is of a 5-10 year big league veteran, not as a borderline teenager. He's impressed me so much. So I think Moises Ballesteros is ready. I think you're getting to the point where Owen Casey had the entire year at the AAA level, got better every month, cut down the strikeout rate, can run. His defense got better. Got to give him an opportunity to succeed in that level. So I think that between Casey, Shaw, I think James Triantos can hit at the big league level right now. Kevin Alcantara, you saw him in September, had a couple big knocks, good at bats. He can play all three outfield positions. So given if they have the time and the opportunity to perform up in the big leagues, I think they're ready to do so.
When you're prepping for all your games for Iowa, obviously you've got to know everything that's going on in Chicago with the Cubs. It's got to be very difficult for you to sort of manage your time, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So, like, walk me through. Obviously, you're doing your prep for your game, but then you've got to know everything else that's sort of going around. So, like, when you're waking up, like are you catching up on the games before, or when you get back home to the hotel if you're on the road? What are you checking out?
Like, I like to watch baseball in general. So when I get home from an Iowa Cubs game, like, of course I'm watching Sports Center or the games that are on or the highlights of the Cubs, or if the Cubs play before the iCubs, I'll watch, because not only will you learn more about the team, I'll learn from Pat Hughes and Boog Shambi and being able to listen to them and integrate some of the contents of their broadcast into my broadcast. So as a broadcaster, I like to watch more baseball so I can learn. And as just a fan of baseball, I like to watch more so I can learn. So,
okay. Yeah, I was just sort of curious about that. One thing that I was watching during the World Series, I kind of want your take on that. It's fascinating to me. It's again sort of segueing completely maybe out, but I believe it was Game 4 when Yankees did win, and you have the two guys in the outfield. I've never seen a more concerted effort to steal a ball in my life, and of course it's going to be in Yankee Stadium. When you're and the commentators obviously are doing a great job. They're saying, well, they're not going to stay there for long. The gentleman in question is saying, well, I hope I don't get everything revoked permanently. I don't know how they don't. I mean, that was the most concerted effort I've ever seen. One guy holding the one arm.
Yeah, I mean, when you physically accost the right fielder with the ball that's in play, and action is taking place, there's probably going to be repercussions for that. Yeah, I mean, I would say anytime that you touch a player when they're on the field of play without it being warranted or for a picture, like, that's grounds for getting kicked out of the stadium and never going to a baseball stadium again, or Major League Baseball, and getting banned. So I'm a zero tolerance.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what I would do. So that's a zero tolerance policy for me. Anytime you touch a player on the field of play, you're gone. So,
especially the way it was.
Yeah,
this wasn't like a flashback from, I want to say 20 years before, where the kid just grabbed the ball in the previous Yankee Stadium. That would have been a home run, and he got on Letterman the next day.
Yeah, Jeffrey Mayer. Yeah.
Yes, that's the one. I couldn't remember. Yeah. But because I was getting vibes of that, but we had like two 40-something guys, I don't know.
Yeah, two grown adults grabbing Mookie Betts' arm and trying to wrestle the ball away from him. Like, for me, it's not even a question. Zero tolerance policy. You're never going back to a big league game again.
I thought Mookie handled that pretty well, all things considering.
Yeah. He handled it a lot better than I would have. So
I was sort of going to say the same thing, but yes. Having said that, I don't think my reach is too good. Especially 5'8", 50 something. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Mookie handled that gracefully. I mean, one, because he's Mookie, two, because he's a premier athlete. So that certainly helps.
I've got because Chris and I, we always focus on Halls of Fame. That's sort of how we sort of became friends and how we became part of this site. And my favorite player all time as a kid passed away. The first person I ever got to interview, actually, for this website, Pete Rose died. And I'm wondering, like for yourself, if there's any memories of Pete, or just like, who was your favorite player as a kid? Like someone who just, when you watched him, you thought that's the way the game should be played.
Griffey. It was Griffey, without a doubt. Yeah. Like, being in my grandparents' backyard and playing wiffle ball and scaling the outfield fence, like with their fence going into the parking lot and backwards hat, pulling the ball back. It was Griffey. Like Griffey and Bonds were the two guys who are just like, they're incredible. They're not from this planet.
And did you ever meet Pete?
I never met Pete. No.
I
wish.
Yeah. For in terms of the Hall of Fame, you're not a voter yet, are you?
I'm not.
You're not. Okay. But at some point that could be certainly possible, like in the future.
Be kind of cool.
Yeah. I'll just say my line for steroids. You might have a different one than I do. For me personally, if I ever had a ballot, which I won't, but if I ever did, I have a delineation line at 2004. Before that, when there was no agreement between the union and MLB. So
yeah,
personally, I can't say that I care what they did before that because baseball allowed it. Once you go past that line and you're suspended, even though we have a phenomenal player in his prime like Alex Rodriguez, who it feels so weird that he's never going to get in, but I get it. Manny Ramirez, as charismatic as he is never going to get in. But Sammy Sosa
got suspended twice.
Yes. Both of them suspended twice. No?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Right. But Sosa, I don't care if he did it or not at that point, just because of the way baseball was. It profited so much.
There's no rhyme or reason to it. Here's my take on it. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Obviously, you have A-Rod not getting in, Manny not getting in, Sosa not getting in, but David Ortiz gets in. Well, because like he took steroids or was in the Metro Report, but he was a nice guy and people loved him. Like you don't get into the Hall of Fame because people love you and you're cool. You get into the Hall of Fame based on your stats. And this is going to be an unpopular take. I want to let them all in. But I want to have a different wing. Like, Major League Baseball, obviously, like you have the wing, you have Cooperstown, and then you have a completely different section for guys whose credentials say that you can get into the Hall of Fame, but you failed tests or you got suspended for baseball due to gambling. I think what you do on the field, we don't know what steroids did to the body and how much they aided somebody's power or eye or batting average or swing speed or bat speed or launch angle. So unless you can figure that out, like the direct correlation there, I would say let them all in, but put them in a different wing. Put Barry Bonds in a different wing. You put him with Pete Rose, put him with Manny Ramirez, put him with Rafael Palmeiro, put him with Sammy Sosa. Like these guys are part of the fabric of baseball. The people who are in it right now, I mean, you go back to the 1920s, 1930s, we don't know what they did. Yeah, we don't know what they did on a personal level. We don't know what they did on a professional level, if they took greenies, if they were domestic abusers. It's just, I think it's just so much easier to put them all in. And if you have an asterisk on your record based on your personal conduct or suspensions or steroids or gambling, you get to go to the other side of Cooperstown.
I'm kind of glad you sort of mentioned like Ortiz and with Sosa, and you might have more of an insight than I do because I remember, in the '90s, and Chris, you might remember that a little also too because like for that area, Sosa was pretty much a god in Chicago until bang he wasn't, and it happened just like that. Am I remembering it wrong? Just because I'm not in Chicago?
No, you're right. Yeah. No. You're right, but it was such a polarizing thing, corking a bat, being steroid allegations. Like Sammy Sosa hit 60 home runs for 5 years, Hall of Famer. Gary Sheffield never even tested positive for steroids. One of the best right-handed hitters of our generation, Hall of Famer. Pete Rose, over 4,000 hits, Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
A-Rod, one of the best players, not just of his generation, of all time, deserves to be a Hall of Famer. Now, does he deserve to be with everyone else who did the game cleanly? No. But does he deserve to be represented in Cooperstown and talked about when it comes to what happened in the 90s and 2000s part of this game? He was a huge part of that. He's one of the best players of that generation. I don't care if he took steroids. Deserves to be there.
I'm going to throw another Chicago name at you, but it's on the other side. I guess you're probably thankful this year that you're not calling White Sox games, but no? Okay. Harold Baines, and that's one our little baseball group. We talk a lot about Baines is an interesting one. I liked Harold. For the record, I was a huge Harold Baines fan. I
Yeah.
will say it over and over again. If that's my DH for 15 years, and I got the number three DH, number three, number four guy at that position for over a decade, I'm happy. He's a great guy. Everyone loves him. Phenomenal guy. Stat wise, it's sort of tricky, and everything sort of broke well for him. I believe like four people on that veterans ballot had a direct correlation to Baines.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that Baines did anything, it just sort of broke perfectly that there was a lot of people who knew him very well, just like, this is a great guy. We got to get him in. Was it? I can't remember if it was unanimous or not, but is there sort of like, is there anyone who you would sort of champion who a lot of people aren't looking at? Because obviously a lot of people, myself included, wasn't thinking of Baines as a Hall of Famer. But is there somebody who you're big on who's really not on that radar, but maybe should be, that we're missing?
Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to the steroid discussion because his name was talked about. There were allegations, but nothing was proven. Like he never got suspended. He never tested positive. Gary Sheffield to me. Gary Sheffield should be a Hall of Famer. Never got suspended, never tested positive, never had an issue with it. It was just allegations as part of his generation. And if you could prove it, great. If you can't, then you should be a Hall of Famer, without a doubt.
I always thought there was two things that worked against Sheffield. One, he was not exactly the most media-friendly guy. And like I always say, it's people voting on people. And if you've got
I wish it was so much more objective than that. Like,
but
you're getting elected to the Hall of Fame because you're a nice guy. Like that's not what like the baseball Hall of Fame should be. It's not the Hall of Character. It's not the Hall of Friendliness. It's a Hall of Fame.
No, and I totally agree with you. But if someone rubs you the wrong way and you're like that gatekeeper, I kind of liken it to. I can be very sarcastic at times. Very big surprise. When I cross the border, I dial that to 0. When I'm at the airport, that's dialed to 0.
Yeah.
And some people who got that vote, they kind of hold it like it's their little revenge thing. And we've seen it play out in the media with some writers.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish it was less arbitrary than that. Yeah, I wish there was more of an objective measure. Like if you're a power hitting right-handed hitter, like you should have more than 400 home runs, or you should hit higher than 300, or your OPS should be over, career over 850, or X amount of all-star appearances, X amount of games played, X amount of runs driven in. So, I mean, I'm just like, I'm going to look at the stats. Like Harold Baines, he had 2,886 hits. You're probably pretty close to a Hall of Famer. Mm-hmm. Now, it could be like the tiebreaker if you're a good guy, or if you're media friendly, or if you're consistent, or if you've done it for 15 years, sure. But like, are you a 300 hitter? Do you have over 2,500 hits? Do you have over 300 home runs? Do you average over 30 doubles per season? This is if you're a hitter. Yeah, I mean, I think Harold is, I mean, stats wise, probably very good, borderline Hall of Famer. And I think that being a good guy put him over the top, and I'm completely fine with that.
Okay. The other thing I was going to say about Sheffield, and to a lesser degree, which I think hurt McGriff, is neither of those players were really associated with one team. And
That's fair.
Yeah, and I think with Sheffield a little bit more than McGriff, even though Sheffield did win the World Series with the Marlins, but the Marlins, pretty much since their existence, I mean, we can't afford you, out you go.
Yeah, no, I mean, Sheffield was what? Milwaukee, San Diego, Florida, Dodgers, Atlanta, Yankees, finished his career with Detroit and the Mets. So, yeah, I mean, it's a fair amount, but I mean, just look at like the core 10 years that he had, and he was as dominant of a right-handed hitter that we had.
Mm-hmm. That was impressive, Alex, just to rattle those off like that. Because, I grew up here in Milwaukee, cheering on Sheffield. When the Brewers drafted him, he immediately became my favorite prospect player coming up through the system. And, obviously was disappointed the way things worked out here. Didn't get a chance to see him play and at his best with Milwaukee. But to kind of have all that information is right there ready to drop on this stream here.
I'm looking at Baseball Reference right now. I didn't.
Okay, all right.
I'm not gonna let you give. Yeah,
I would have bought
it. Yes. So you're in the off season now, but you're not working. What's keeping Alex busy right now?
Yeah, I mean, I've been able to do some college sports. So, being in Iowa, have a package of games and matches and meets with Iowa State. So, doing about 10 Iowa State men's and women's basketball games. Been able to spend some time in Chicago, call some games for DePaul University, Chicago State University. So, just trying to get the freelance Rolodex building and do more sports and just keep myself busy, occupied, my brain trained until baseball. So.
How is it different calling the basketball to the baseball, other than the speed of the game, obviously moving on, but does it really take a lot to kind of switch between sports, or is it just kind of?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Like right after your first basketball broadcast or mine, like I have to sit in the dark for like a half hour. It's like, wow, my brain is moving so fast, his action's moving so fast. You have to recalibrate. But I mean, it was interesting because I called baseball earlier in my career, or this should be basketball more frequently than baseball earlier in my career because I played baseball. So, I called 50, 100 basketball games before I even hopped on the mic for a baseball game. So that's where I really got my roots. And no, I like it. I mean, the basketball broadcast, especially when you have a color analyst who had played the game before, like rely on them. It's a fun, easy, free flowing broadcast.
Are there going to be
when does your baseball?
Go ahead.
When you kick back in for baseball then for spring training and
yeah, I mean so I did 5 spring training games last year. My first game was February 27th. So don't know when it's going to be this year. Hope it's earlier rather than later. But then you have March 27th, the Iowa Cubs season starts, and big league season starts a little bit earlier than that because the Cubs are playing the Dodgers in Japan. So we'll see.
Oh, so you think you might be able to make a trip out there?
No, I'm just saying the Cubs season starts then. So no, I mean it'd be great too, but you never know. But no, my initial reaction is they're probably going to reserve that for the guys who've been doing it for a long time. And when you have voices like Pat Hughes and Buchner, if they want to, they deserve to be out there. So.
Oh, that's excellent. I guess last question I've got. So you're mentioning you're doing all this stuff in Iowa. Is it just going to be basketball, or will they maybe have you do any other sports?
I've done a bunch. I've done a bunch of other sports. So I've already done volleyball this year. I have that package of basketball games. I've done soccer. I do gymnastics. I do softball. I would love to get more into football, but it's just tough when the minor league season ends and it's already week 6 of college football and week 4 of the NFL. Like it makes it a little bit more difficult. But I have an experience doing 7, 8 other sports, and obviously baseball is my passion and the sport that I have the most experience in, but I enjoy doing the other sports for sure.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to talk to Chris and I. This is what we live for. We just love having these conversations. This is great. Chris, I'll leave the last word to you.
Yeah. Again, yes. Thanks for taking the time today.
Anytime.
Yeah. How can the fans here follow you on the games, on the Iowa Cubs games, or on the socials? How can they connect up with you?
Yeah, I mean, look at X or Twitter or whatever it's called now at Voice of Cohen 2. It used to be at Voice of Cohen. That got hacked in 2023, and my messages to Elon have gone unanswered. I think he's been a little busier lately, so mine must be just in the spam file. But yeah, at Voice of Cohen 2. Always look at iowacubs.com. You can listen in on AM 940. You can listen on MILB TV, and then select games on MLB TV. So,
well, thank you again so much. And as always, wherever everyone is, wherever you are, wherever you may be, make today count because it never comes again. Take care, everybody.